everyone, Loremaster of Sotek here, and I hope you're all having a lovely day. We have quite a bit of awesome information that has been revealed by both Games Workshop and Creative Assembly pertaining to Cathay. Almost all of it is entirely focused on lore and unit reveals, and I am very, very excited to talk about it today. We're going to basically go over everything they have shown off, and I'll discuss it a little bit. I am working on at least 3 videos right now, focusing on various things that I think will be super duper interesting. And there are some really awesome confirmations of lore aspects that I have been suspect of, but to get confirmation not only is super nice because it lets me know that I'm in the headspace I need to be to understand Cathay, but it also just makes it where I can do more theory crafting because I have a larger foundation to work on, and I'm really excited to share those with you in the near future. But in any event, let's go ahead and spend today going over the articles we've had revealed yesterday. So, first, we of course have the article here from Games Workshop, which I think most people in the Total War community may not be aware of. I know there actually isn't the largest of overlaps between people who play Total War and actually keep up with all of the articles from Creative Assembly and people who play anything tabletop and keep up with all the articles by Games Workshop, but they're actually releasing articles together. Games Workshop seems to be really wanting to push the idea of that Cathay is a big accomplishment for them, which it is. You know, it's obviously a massive collaborative concept between them and Creative Assembly. I don't necessarily want to give super big credit to either side. I think Creative Assembly probably deserves more of the accolade. Not that it's a contest, but it's not a big secret that if it wasn't for Total War, we wouldn't even be talking about fantasy right now. And if it wasn't for Total War's success and continuing to push to expand the world as much as possible, the idea of a playable Cathay would just be a pipe dream. You don't have to go back that far for the idea of Cathay to be completely alien, and I have heard on very good authority that in prior conversations many years ago now, that Games Workshop was not even remotely interested in doing a Cathay. So the fact that they did a 180 and are now fully supporting the project and helped out with its creation, it looks like they actually really did commit very heavily to trying to help as much as they could. And I'm really excited to see this collaboration really come to life. This is kind of the first time we've seen something like this. I mean, the Vampire Coast had a little bit of new stuff, but the Vampire Coast was 90% things that just came from different sources all brought together. The only really new thing that was in there was Celestia Deer Fund, and then everything else was kind of a mix. But Cathay is genuinely new from top to bottom, and of course Kislev has seen a lot of changes too, though some of the Kislev stuff, well, you know. But anyway, let's focus on what has been released. So some of the really cool things that we got from the Warhammer community page is we got what seems to be the original concept art for Meow Ying. So we've got here in her human form and then in her dragon form. So these are basically the first concepts that were designed by Games Workshop, and then they eventually passed things over to Creative Assembly and continued to have backs and forths, and Creative Assembly gave us this Meow Ying, which is just much further developed and prepared to be created for a 3D video game. So I am, of course, a huge fan of this design. Although I've been memeing quite a bit about it, Meow Ying has honestly captured my heart in many ways. She is just stone cold looking, and I absolutely love her design and can't wait to mess with her. But we do have a lore blurb for her from Games Workshop, which is that we have Meow Ying, the Storm Dragon, ruler of the northern provinces and the Great Bastion, master of the storm winds, and the supreme matriarch of Nangao. So the little blurb about her says, the Storm Dragon rules over northern Cathay and commands the armies of the Great Bastion. Cold and aloof, the Storm Dragon has ruled over the Great Bastion for centuries after its defense was entrusted to her by the Celestial Dragon. Largely considered the favorite of their father by the other dragons, Storm Dragon lords her position over her siblings, and when they meet, often stands apart from them. Despite her power, the Storm Dragon has a significant task in the defense of the North, and her armies are almost constantly at war. Added to this is the independence of the lords of Nangao, whom she relies upon to arm the Great Bastion with their wondrous war machines. Outwardly, they work together, but the lords often scheme amongst themselves and against her, dividing her attention from the Empire's enemies beyond the wall. Her vaulted position also means her father entrusts her with important tasks, some of which can put her at odds with her siblings, especially if she is required to deal with the chaos incursions within the Empire itself. And we do have a further detailing about it that we'll speak about in a little bit, but one of the big confirmations we got in this article, in the Creative Assembly article, is that there are Tzeentchian cults within Cathay. So while, if you go back to the older lore, Tzeentch had a significant amount of control within Cathay, that has been dialed down quite a bit. However, it does seem that Tzeentch still does have a lot of sympathy within Cathay. There are people who are being manipulated by the Tzeentchian cults, or who desire power or revenge or a change of station, to the extent that they're willing to cooperate with Chaos powers. And considering that we know that there's going to be a cultist hero for each of the four gods, they are likely going to be running around causing all sorts of havoc and problems within Cathay, and you're going to be having to deal with it if you're playing as Cathay, or deal with it in Kislev if you're playing as Kislev. But I imagine for Cathay, it's probably going to be a more dramatic thing of dealing with a lot of these cults running around inside your empire. Another blurb we have here. So first we have the art from the Old World team, and then we get to see the Total War Warhammer team's take on it. And it is the Terracotta Sentinels. The Terracotta Sentinels are creations born of the dragon's mastery of the elemental winds. So that's something we'll speak about in a minute. Each one a towering animated statue fashioned in the form of a great warrior. Often they are found carved into the sides of the Great Bastion itself, their helmets and spears making up its battlements, their bodies its buttresses. They can also, however, be found throughout the Empire, often standing watch over fields, bridges, and cities, unmoving until they are animated for war. Legend has it that these sentinels are gigantic soldiers of an army built by the Dragon Emperor thousands of years ago, when chaos threatened to overwhelm the Empire. Since then, they have been left scattered across Cathay, waiting to be called to war once more. So, first we have the note of the dragon's mastery of the elemental winds. Now, what I'm assuming is that the elemental winds is the Cathayan term for the winds of magic, being a very specific terminology they use to describe that. Which likely means that Cathay is going to have a very different understanding of how the winds of magic are, how they weave and they're broken apart and they function, compared to the Western realms, where all magical knowledge that we have in the West is based on how the Slann or the elves interpret magic, which is as the eight winds, which is like, that's for us the true form of magic. But I'm really interested to see what the Dragon Emperor's theology or terminology on magic is going to be, and if it's going to be different. Because something that we're going to be talking about in an upcoming video focused on the Dragon Emperor is that he is a really, really important character now that we know enough about him to talk about him in depth, because he's going to have a very different perspective on the world than basically any other race on the planet. Because the Dragon Emperor is, quite frankly, one of the oldest entities we now know of in Warhammer Fantasy. I mean, he is easily up there with Krakenrock the Black, and is, if I had to guess, an old enemy of Krakenrock the Black's. But, that's something we'll discuss as we get to that particular video. And then the last unit they reveal, which has some really cool notes in its lore, is the Kongming Sky Lanterns and Sky Junks. So the Sky Lanterns are the smaller ones right here. They're the single balloons that just they have two snipers, and then they have a strategist in them. And then the Sky Junks are the larger ships that have the front-mounted rocket batteries, which are these things right here. as well as more guns, and they're just larger. So the Cathayan fleets maintain, or the Cathayans maintain fleets of aerial vessels comprising Kongming sky lanterns and larger sky junks to keep watch over their borders. In the trailer, the flight of these aircraft took to the skies to battle against the airborne elements of their Zinchian foes. And then we've got lore blurs for both of them. So for the Sky Lantern, it says the Kongming Sky Lanterns are used by Cathayan armies to observe enemies from on high, as well as direct troops in battle. Held aloft by a caged vermilion warbird, the creature's burning wings giving the great balloon lift, a Sky Lantern holds an armored gondola beneath its bulk. From this gondola, one of the Lord Magistrate's best strategists uses fans and banners to signal troops or direct the fire of the army's war machines. Should enemy flyers or missile troops get too close, a pair of crane gunners snipe from their exceptional vantage point. So it seems that the long rifles that we see in a lot of the Cathayan army, whether it's on their ships or in the like Giselle looking ladies that are on the ground, I'm assuming they're called crane gunners. I don't know if maybe the crane gunners only refers to the Sky Lantern variant, but I would not be surprised if the Giselle variant has a similar naming convention. And then the other one, we have the Kongming Sky Junk. So the Kongming Sky Junk was an invention of Shi Hong, Nangao's master war artificer. The Kongming Sky Junk is a wonder of the Celestial Army. As large as a ship of the Jade Fleet, it is suspended in the air by a series of sky lanterns. Its armored cradle able to turn aside arrows and bullets as its crew rains death down upon the enemies of the Empire. These great vessels can be seen defending the borders of Grand Cathay, but are also used beyond the Great Bastion, where armadas of the Emperor's skyships have laid waste to entire marauder tribes. So, really great information. So first of all, we have basically what our Cathayan Phoenix is. We have like birds made out of elemental fire, or firebirds, which are the Vermilion Warbirds. So the Vermilion Warbirds are what allow the lanterns to fly. They're not powered by gas. They're powered by hot air, but these elemental spirits that are caged within means that the balloons are not going to explode. They're not filled with like helium or something that may result in disastrous consequences if they take a little bit of damage. So I do like that this lore structure kind of gives them a much more, it makes them a little less looking prone to sudden death. Obviously, while the balloons themselves seem rather fragile, one thing we do have quite a bit of focus on is that apparently all of the like parts of the people are, so the cradles is what they call them, and the gondolas seem to be quite heavily armored. One of the things that I'm really interested in is the Sky Lantern. Seems that it is more explicitly used as a strategic focus. So it's that idea of having a strategist in your army who gets a bird's eye view, like the player frankly does, and is able to give signals. So I'm wondering if this is gonna somehow be a piece that, while it's also able to shoot people with like the crane gunners, I wonder if it's gonna have like special abilities like rally, or things that allow you to buff your troops. So maybe it allows you send it out to get line of sight on the enemy troops, and then you're able to have your missile units start firing from a longer range. Maybe he has buffs that allow your units to like boost their harmony, or gain momentary boost to certain stats like leadership and melee defense. I'm really interested to see what the Sky Lantern is going to be doing performance-wise. The Sky Junk seems like, it's basically just a big war balloon that the Kongming Sky Junk's just going to get in there and be like blasting with guns in all directions. And it seems that it is intentionally designed to fight people in the air and also to obliterate people across the ground. So, especially with all those rockets it has, I could easily see the Sky Junk being pretty devastating to lightly armored melee infantry running around on the ground, which is basically the MO of Marauder tribes. So all in all, we have a lot of really good information. Probably the biggest thing that stands out to me is we have essentially a special character, Shi Hong. So Shihong, which is Namgao's master war artificer. I'm curious if he is going to be a lord that Meow Ying is going to have to deal with, or if he maybe will be like a legendary hero or something that you're able to acquire, who's basically an engineer type character. But we definitely are going to want to keep an eye out for Shihong going forward. Now, that's just the Games Workshop article. Let's talk about the Creative Assembly article. So the Creative Assembly article is frankly just a lore blurb that gives us a bit more information. Honestly, it doesn't give us a lot of information that we didn't already know, but it gives us enough to start working on some theories. So it says, in case you haven't heard, Grand Cathay is coming to Total War Warhammer 3. In the thrilling conclusion of the Warhammer trilogy, while not counting the years of live support we'll be offering, Grand Cathay joins the four Chaos Gods and the Kislevite peoples as one of our factions that will fight the future of the world. But who are they? So it says, Grand Cathay is a massive and incredibly powerful empire situated in the east of the Warhammer world, beyond the Darklands, across the Mountains of Morn, and past the Great Maw, the gaping wound in the land caused by Grand Cathay's Astromasters millennia ago. So instead of Astromancers, it says Astromasters, so that's kind of funny. I wonder if those are like different classifications. It covers a landmass larger than the Empire, Bretonia, and many other nations combined. Vast cities pockmark the landscape with huge populations watched over by the ruling dragons. The Celestial Dragon Emperor, his consort, the Moon Empress, and their children. So this to me also seems to confirm that the Moon Empress herself is a dragon. From what I've been guessing and kind of reading and stuff, something that I've spoken about with Ryo, if you caught the last episode of Lorebeards, is that it is pretty much guaranteed that the Celestial Dragon Emperor is gold or yellow, because the yellow dragon or the gold, I assume he'll be gold because it's it's just an upgraded version of yellow, is a symbol reserved for the emperor in Chinese history. So he is almost certainly going to be a yellow or golden dragon. Now, the Moon Empress, we have spoken quite a bit about. There are many, many mythologies when it comes to a Moon Empress or like a ruling class that lives on the moon and is established with all this other nonsense. And I'm assuming it seems to be that she is also a dragon. But if I had to guess, she's probably silver or white, but which means that it seems that she is more reflected by Zhao Ming as far as coloration goes, though Zhao Ming's personality, I would guess, is actually much closer to his father. But moving on, harmony is the driving force behind Cathayan society. The teachings of the Dragon Emperor are such that everyone must work in concert with themselves and the land for the betterment of all and to find their natural place. This drives everything, from their magic lores of yin and yang to how the dragons govern their people. Far from tyrants or aloof aristocrats, the dragons act as teachers and wardens for the populace. They see little point in creating an imbalance between mortals and themselves when the ever-present threat of chaos will happily destroy them all. Similarly, the dragons are not treated as gods, nor do they demand worship. They are immensely powerful beings, rulers by magical and physical right rather than mysterious divinity. The iconography of the dragons is commonplace and ever-present throughout society, but because they are very real, very present, and very powerful rulers. They are treated by the people with reverence. Such beings deserve, and speaking ill of them, especially if you are not native to Grand Cathay, is a quick way to get yourself killed. The dragons often move among the people in human form. While still evidently far beyond a commoner, they only transform to their draconic selves when there is need, embracing their heritage to lay waste to a battlefield and fly far above their forces. In war, the harmony of the Cathayan way of life is ever present, their forces acting in concert to lay waste to enemies with devastating precision and calm. In Warhammer 3, our focus is on two main areas: Northern Cathay with the Storm Dragon Meow Ying and the Great Bastion, and Western Cathay with the Iron Dragon Zhao Ming and the Ivory Road. The land of the Storm Dragon includes the fortress city of Nangao, never conquered or sacked despite the many wars that have met its borders. Naturally, the Great Bastion dominates much of the landscape, with its massive gates and huge patrols of troops fending off attacks from chaos. The eastern steppes make up the lands beyond, thoroughly infested with chaos of every stripe. No mention of hobgoblins, though. Meow Ying is arguably the most powerful dragon alive, save her mother and father. Immense power and immense responsibility land on her shoulders, and she could seem cold and aloof in comparison to her siblings. The defense of the realm, the future of Grand Cathay, and much more is quite the burden to bear. Meanwhile, the Iron Dragon must make do with a less defended, if less chaotic, area of the world. The western provinces contain beasts and men of all sorts coming from further west, as well as the regular incursions of Skaven and ogres from the Warpstone Desert and Mountains of Morn. The creation of the Great Maw still hangs heavy on this area, even as an uneasy peace maintains. Zhao Ming is a natural-born warrior, though less innately skilled than his sister to the north. He's a talented alchemist and shows great preference for the art among his armies, much to the chagrin of those that find the insidious magics worrying for the Empire. His long life stationed so close to the Great Maw and all that warpstone mean many fear his mind is permanently damaged from the exposure, and any eccentricities or erratic behavior he displays is very worrying to his sibling. Of course, stability and prosperity have not reigned forever and are unlikely to continue without a fight. The history of Grand Cathay is longer than even chaos, originating more than 5,000 years previous, when the Celestial Dragon Emperor ruled the land before the coming of the Old Ones. He learned how to take the form of a human to gather the tribes, and when chaos began to sweep the world, he defended his burgeoning empire, eventually constructing the Great Bastion to keep the hordes at bay. It has been attacked on innumerable occasions, damaged, and even sometimes breached, but still the Great Bastion stands as powerful a vanguard against chaos as ever, constantly maintained and garrisoned by massive armies. Only Tzeentch, known to Grand Cathay as Xian Qi, has managed to significantly infiltrate the Empire, his cults being a common cause of disruption and rebellion within. Trade is the main reason the Western factions know of Grand Cathay's existence, and its primary interaction with them. For outsiders, it is a realm of infinite riches and pleasures unknown, seemingly immune from the endless terrors that prowl the outside world. Well, this is far from the truth. The absolute economic power of the Ivory Road cannot be disputed, and those that make their living along it are evidence of that. For Grand Cathay, there is plenty to gain from an outside world with technology, trinkets, and beasts that are all foreign to them. The most tumultuous time in Grand Cathay's history came when a combination of invasions from chaos in the north and the Monkey King from the south, alongside a 4-century disappearance of the Dragon Emperor and the Moon Empress, nearly led the Empire to ruin. Then, more than any other time, the natural competition between the Emperor's children reached its peak, and Grand Cathay was essentially divided into warring states. This allowed the Monkey King to take power and claim dominion over the Empire, an act heinous enough to galvanize the warring siblings into once again putting aside their differences to fight for their father's throne. At the key moment, the Emperor and Empress returned and helped to defeat the Monkey King, who fled south. Little is known of him or his fate. Perhaps yet darker days may be on the horizon. Events the world over are conspiring to require the attention of even these isolationists. Chaos amasses beyond the Great Bastion like never before. Rebellion and squabbles between local factions are reaching new heights within the Empire. Whatever machinations the Celestial Dragon Emperor has been planning continue to come to fruition, but to what end, only he knows. What are you going to do about it? So, that is the lore write-up. There is quite a few exciting things in there. The biggest things that stand out to me are that, A, we got 100% confirmation of the Monkey King, which is very, very exciting. I know many of us were really, really hoping we were going to see the Monkey King, but, you know, it wasn't really sure whether or not he was going to get kicked. Like, he would still hopefully be in the lore, but we didn't know whether he'd be important or mentioned. And the fact that he's already coming up as a topic of conversation means that he is a big deal, especially considering he actually managed to take over Cathay. So without the Dragon Emperor and the Moon Empress around, he actually managed to defeat all of the dragon siblings and claimed Cathay for himself, which is a which goes to show that his power level is probably quite extreme. I imagine the Monkey King is a very, very powerful character, and it's interesting to learn that he came from the South. In traditional Cathayan maps and lore and literature, the Monkey King is usually more associated with the Western Mountains as opposed to the South. But I'm curious what exactly is going to be in the South that kind of marks it as the domain of the Monkey King. And while we do know that Game 3 is going to focus on the northern and western provinces to begin, I do really hope we're going to see all of Grand Cathay on the map, you know, mainly because I want to see expansions to nations that are south of Cathay with Koresh and Ind. But I would really love to see the Monkey King as kind of one of the main antagonists that you can be down there. Or maybe, of course, he's in hiding when the game releases and then he shows up as a DLC later. But this pretty much confirms to me 100% that the Monkey King is probably slotted for a very, very early DLC. If I had to guess, the Monkey King will probably be the first or second DLC that comes out for Total War Warhammer 3. That seems incredibly likely. And it's also good to know that he does not seem Chaos aligned. Like, obviously the dragons do not like him because he's probably a very, probably, you know, much more of a stinker or a bit of a wild card than they like, and he's not one of them. And I'm guessing the dragons are very not okay with a non-dragon claiming power. So I'm really interested to see what he's going to be like. I'm curious if he's going to be sort of the Archon the Black kind of character among the Cathayan lords, where most of them are dragons, and then you have the Monkey King, who's sort of this outcast that's really powerful. But it's going to be really interesting to learn more about him. I'm really curious to learn if he's sympathetic to Cathay, as in, like, does he like chaos? Does he work with chaos? Or is he more of a very selfish and inward-looking individual? You know, when it comes to the actual original myths of the Monkey King from the Journey to the West, the Monkey King is an incredibly selfish and very ambitious character who was insanely powerful, and the only thing that could stop him was like Buddha. But eventually, like, the Monkey King did learn to become less of an asshole and ended up going from being a 100% anti-hero, almost villainous character, to being a hero with some anti-hero tendencies. But at the end of the day, he was still heroic. And was, I would say, a good person when his story, you know, got developed enough. So I'm kind of hoping we get to see a development like that with the Warhammer Monkey King, that maybe this was him at his worst, and then when we finally catch up with him after he fled into the South and he becomes a playable character, maybe he's sort of turning a new leaf. So he might not get along with the dragons, but he's still a good guy in the grand scheme of things. You know, he hates chaos and is willing to fight against it. But a lot of really good information here. We do get, you know, some good confirmation that Zhao Ming does seem to be going insane, or at least his siblings think he is. And we do learn that alchemy seems to be considered it seems that alchemy is considered a more dangerous or corruptive form of magic than astromancy is, which makes sense. I mean, Cathay has such a long history of having astromancers and astromasters, as they call them, which seems to be like the more established lore of magic, which I would assume is the lore of I'm assuming that's probably the lore of Yang, and then alchemists, which are probably the lore of Yin, are that concept of I pointed it out in the trailer. If you actually go watch the trailer, the woman we see fighting is using like that magic that looks like big ink splotches. And she actually, there's a moment where you can see she actually has a vial in her hands that it looks like she throws at somebody, or she like breaks it to start casting her magic. It's right before she starts casting. And I'm wondering if that is alchemy, and maybe like he's embracing it full on, because the thing with alchemy is alchemy very heavily implies you know, like you transmutation, creating things, working with like science and potions and stuff. And if Zhao Ming is out by the Great Maw in the Warpstone Desert, that means there is a ton of Warpstone he could be working with. And if he's working with Warpstone in order to like push alchemy even further, then he's going to be very powerful, but he's probably also going to be off his rocker, and a fair bit insane. I'm really curious to learn more about that. But we do know that Meow Ying is the favored child. She is the most powerful of the dragon children, which is why she has been given the Great Bastion. You know, she comes off as very cold and aloof, and she seems to consider herself better and superior to her siblings, which if I had to guess, really pisses off her brother, Zhao Ming. So there's probably going to be a lot of animosity between these two siblings, where you have the older big sister who has all these responsibilities and she's really powerful and everything, but she acts like she's something, like she acts like she's better, which is no doubt going to heavily sour her relationship with Zhao Ming, who's probably going to be a bit of a hothead, considering that he breathes fire and is the Iron Dragon. But really interested to learn more about all these guys. The Celestial Dragon Emperor, his lore lines up 100% solidly with the lore we have of the universe, and his character makes a lot of sense so far. I'm going to be doing a whole video dedicated to him very soon, where we're going to be looking at the timeline of Warhammer Fantasy as it's already been established, and try and fit in where the Dragon Emperor has been doing everything he's been doing within that timeline. Because we have a good roughly 7,000 years worth of stuff to cover with the Celestial Dragon Emperor, and that's just like following the timeline with the old ones. He actually is going to go back further than that. So look forward to a timeline video kind of discussing him and what all he may be up to. Let's see. The big thing I really want to try and do is pinpoint when everything got really bad. So we know there was a 400-year period that was basically a warring state era, which I know the warring state era is technically a Japanese term, but I'm assuming China. But we know China has had a lot of civil wars over the course of their very long history. So I would not at all be surprised if the big civil war where like the emperor was absent for 400, the emperor and his wife were absent for 400 years, simultaneously with the giant chaos invasion, simultaneously with the Monkey King's invasion, likely means that you know, that was a huge negative point for them, and I'm going to see if I can figure out when that happened in the timeline. So I hope you all really enjoyed this video. That's going to be it. I just kind of wanted to talk through all of this stuff. I'll have links to the articles down below so you can check them out yourself if you haven't read them. And let me know what you think in the comment section. I mean, what aspect of that's been revealed so far are you the most excited for? Are you the most excited to find out more about Zhao Ming, the Iron Dragon, like if he's going crazy, and if so, what's causing him to go crazy specifically? Something that a lot of people have been pointing out is that he does have a emerald in the center of his head that may be made out of warpstone. Considering that he uses alchemy and he's really big into alchemy, I can't help but wonder if maybe he's using warpstone to augment his power, because we know the Iron Dragon is not as powerful as his sister. But if he started to use alchemy and warpstone to further his power so he could like catch up to her, it, you know, would come at a cost. So let me know if maybe Zhao Ming is what you're the most interested in. Or learning more about Meow Ying and like her whole story of defending the Great Bastion and what she's been up to and what she's had to deal with. Maybe you want to know more about Shi Hong, the Nangao's Master War Artificer, who kind of sounds like he may be a really interesting and powerful character. Or maybe you're most interested to learn more about the Celestial Dragon Emperor and what exactly he's up to, because he's up to something. There is no way he's like, the fact that he vanished for 400 years likely means him and his wife went somewhere. They went to go do something, and they came back just in time to help stop the Monkey King, and then have been working on something ever since, you know, while staying home. So he's got to be up to something big. So there's a lot of really fun stuff to talk about. I look forward to speaking with you all about it during live streams while I work on my own theories, and videos about that kind of stuff will be coming out, as they're finished. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you around. Bye.